Well, welcome. This is our very first episode of the Volusia County Uncovered podcast. My name is Sarah Donnelly, and I'm joined with Lori Becker here as we uncover the stormwater system failure here in Port Orange. I'm born and raised here in Ormond Beach. Me and my twin sister graduated from Seabreeze High School and went on to graduate from University of North Florida. I have my degree in communications, and I'm an aspiring journalist, which is a big reason why me and Lori, I've paired up with her and we're embarking on this journey to see change in our community. Hurricane Milton really put us over the edge, flooding wise. And so there's a lot that can be done, and we want to be an educational resource, and we want to be able to inform people about what you can do to see a change. So I want to pass it over to Lori and introduce herself.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me today. Yeah, I'm so lucky that I met you at a city council meeting back in October, post Milton by about 2 or 3 weeks. There were many city citizens that came to kind of, let the city know that they were upset about all of the flooding that was happening post-Milton. So a little bit of my background. I've been in Florida for about 40 years. I've lived in the same neighborhood for 40 years. And so I flooded the last 2 storms we had with Hurricane Ian and Hurricane Milton. And after Milton, I started to think, we have to do more. We have to do more to hold our city council people, local government accountable. And I really just wanted to hear what they had to say about what we can do better to build back in the future. And so you and I clearly had the same ideas together of wanting to, help our community to not have to worry about being flooded after a storm. We took 14 inches, with Milton.
We did.
Not everyone flooded a second time. I only flooded half of my house the second time. So, some people flooded severely the second time. So together, you and I, seem to be on the same page with trying to educate our community and to inform them, give them some knowledge, some resources, and hopefully to empower people to step up and not be afraid to approach your city commission.
Absolutely. And you have been so plugged in throughout this whole process into the city of Port Orange, and you've talked to city officials, you've been talking to residents. I mean, you're very knowledgeable. It really was, I think, magic that we were able to pair up and meet at that city council meeting. And so, yeah, that's our goal with this podcast, is we're here to break down why your home flooded in Port Orange, and we're here to talk about that. So I think the best place to start is really to kind of go back to October, to that meeting. And right after Hurricane Milton hit and all that devastation, I mean, it was crazy. I mean, you remember the damage. We had people that were in this hurricane still flooded so bad, people were in kayaks.
Yes.
And so maybe it's worth it to know some of that severe damage that residents faced and what we saw.
Yes. So there are some superflood zones in the eastern side of Volusia County, which is where I'm more familiar with that. Severe flooding. We've had the Cambridge Basin down in the Spruce Creek area has the dam broke, 2 years ago during Ian, and so that's just been held up by large sandbags while they're waiting funding to fix that. So there again, they flooded. Also, my neighborhood, the Sugar Forest area, seems to be a big fishbowl whenever we get more than about 10 inches of rain. Severe flooding, 2 and 3 feet.
That's how the city's been described, is kind of as a fishbowl, where our elevation, it's important to note, you're only 3 feet above sea level.
Correct.
Whereas other cities in Volusia County, they don't face that issue. They're a little bit higher above elevation.
Right. And so I live in a home that was built in the 70s. So back in the 70s and the 80s, there was not a big stormwater code plan. And so they were able to build houses almost on grade level. Okay, like my neighborhood specifically is built on grade level. And so, obviously that is not going to withstand even a severe rain. So that is a problem with most of the houses east of Nova. okay? East of Nova, the Nova Canal, we all know about the Nova Canal, that cannot handle the large influx of tidal surge that comes during a hurricane, of course, depending on the tide. So all of that water that the Nova Canal is bringing in from Ormond all through Holly Hill, Daytona, South Daytona into Port Orange, that has to eventually have an outflow at the Rose Bay, okay? So the canal cannot handle all of that tidal surge. And so what happens is it backs up into all the canals. It backs up into the canals, the ditches, okay? And it's overflowing from pond to pond to pond. And so that's where the houses, at least in my community around Sugar Forest, are taking the biggest hit.
We have the two main canals. We have our Nova Canal and we have the B12 Canal. We've got our three main outfall structures, in the county where the water that comes from large storm systems, it falls into these ponds and ditches and canals. And then as you're explaining, it backs up. And so I think a problem too is the drainage and the cleanliness of the ditches and the drains. I know that's been a big problem. We don't have the resources. City officials say that we don't have the resources to get out there and clean those ditches. And then there's also the problem of private easement or, is it public property? And so maybe we can, that's an issue that really affects homeowners, on a daily basis, whether it's a large storm structure or not. So let's dive into that and talk about, some of the problems that we experience within the actual system.
Right. Okay. So, my biggest concern when I first approached the city council was my ditch that surrounds my house that flooded my area and also, the Sugar Forest area. But it's really a much bigger picture than that. So, a lot of people called the city prior to the storm, the Public Works Department, can you come clean my ditch? Can you come clean my stormwater drain? Can you? The city was completely overwhelmed. They just are not prepared with manpower, with equipment, to be able to respond to all of these problems that we have. Well, a lot of people found out, as I did, that there's private ditches, like what's behind my home on my property line belongs to me, not the defunct HOA behind me. Some people have county maintained ditches. Some people have city maintained ditches. So it really depends on where you live and whether you're going to get help or not. Because if it's a private entity, your only hope is is for them to take that with eminent domain and take control over trying to clean that ditch for you. And you would think that they would want to at least make a consideration to that. But there's a lot of kickback. I have found there is a lot of kickback on that. The city just doesn't want to take responsibility for private property, ditches, and canals. And so we're kind of stuck there. And also, I had a personal conversation with engineering in the city of Port Orange, and I was, clearly told they are understaffed and they don't have all the right equipment to be able to go and help everybody that wants their ditch cleaned. So yeah, resources are a big problem. The Stormwater Master Plan is in progress right now, which is great, but that's the plan they started years ago, not anything from current.
Back in October, I forget, that's kind of when I think a lot of residents, or at least the ones that showed up, really found out about this Stormwater Master Plan.
Initially in October, when we were all like, okay, well, we need a better plan. Oh, well, we have a plan. And that plan is 80% done. This was in October. And it's still 80% in December. And apparently we're coming to the finish line because they said March, and we're already seeing bits and pieces coming out that the city Port Orange, at least Port Orange City Hall, has been advertising on social media that this is the plan that is coming, that the city has gotten with state legislatures, they've had meetings, they're getting ready to go to Tallahassee. They need money for this. They need money for stormwater fixes and repairs. So, and we all know that takes time.
And I think one of the biggest parts of the Stormwater Master Plan, which we did see complete, was the cleaning of the Nova Canal, which I know actually myself driving around off Nova, I did see workers out there with their utility vehicles actually cleaning out that canal.
I know.
So that was really hopeful to see.
Yeah, it was. I watched it because I live right off that Nova Canal. That Nova Canal is part of the reason why I flood.
Well, yeah, and it's such a crucial piece of infrastructure to our city. I mean, it's really
the county, really. It's
so
from
important.
Ormond all the way to Rose Bay, and we're taking everybody's water in Port Orange. We're dumping it into Rose Bay. If we have a big tidal surge, Rose Bay can't handle it. It cannot handle it.
Right, it's a tidally influenced body of water.
Right.
Yep.
And so that Cambridge pump station collapsed years ago from the last storm. So now,
that wasn't even talked about. Well, that wasn't something that was even really. There's been sandbags. The canal, the Cambridge pump station has been held up by sandbags for years, and that's something that we were talking about was at one of the meetings, how city officials were kind of defending the sandbags and
defending them because they don't have the money or the plan was in progress. Now the Army Corps of Engineers the plan has been approved. It's going to be started sometime in the fall of 2025. It's going to take years to finish. Okay, and this is the second one, by the way.
And we do need to note that is a huge piece of this, is that anything that the city does, there has to be some type of study done by the Army Corps of Engineers. So they very much work together. It's not like the city can really do anything without Army Corps of Engineers when it comes to, new infrastructure in our city.
Right, I think that's federal funding. So that's one of the upgrades that they're proposing. The other one is the construction of a stormwater pond and a pump system at the Pepper Hill and Madeline Avenue area, which hopefully will relieve some of the flooding issues in my neighborhood. They say it'll be about 600 homes that it should help. I'm not really sure that's going to affect my side, but it is one of the proposed projects that they have going.
Can you give people, because I know a lot of people from Port Orange are probably tune in, but maybe people that aren't familiar to the city where Pepper Hill is?
Okay, so Nova Road Canal ends around Madeline. Okay, Madeline is kind of a cut through. It goes all the way from US 1, comes down Charles Street, winds around, goes all the way to Williamson. I mean, it's a big thoroughfare, and it's only growing because they just put a new subdivision in there where 150 homes are getting ready to go in. And that's actually where this all began, because when the Madeline Commons / Campbell Crossing development came in, all the residents were panicked that we were going to flood. And they had every reason to be panicked because it did flood. It did flood, and it flooded the school. It flooded Sugar Mill. 13 classrooms got flooded. Storm drains were blocked. Many people flooded. So there was concern for that. So the city recognizes that is a kind of a liability, and so that is an area where they're trying to make changes with a pond and a pump station.
I think the residents really got so fired up about that because people started to realize when these new constructions are coming about in the city that they are up to code. And so that means that they are okay within the limits of stormwater, what it takes to uphold in a storm. And so when you build new buildings that are elevated, well, then what happens to all the other surrounding areas it's that bowl effect where the water dips into them and then they experience flooding. So I think that was a big problem with Madeline Commons. and people realize that we can't continue to have new building because
especially around communities with homes that are built in the 70s and 80s. So you put this whole new subdivision in there with a whole new stormwater code plan, which is great. They got their big culvert pipes and now they have ways for the water to discharge. But with the community that's around it that does not have that plan, most of the houses are built on grade. Okay, so it is going to be a problem. And we saw that unfold when Sugar Mill, took in some water. So we really don't, it's a continuing, it's all like, it's happening as we speak. We really don't know what to expect for the next big hurricane coming. But I do know that that FEMA, FEMA is trying to mitigate, so we're in hazard mitigation right now. The county had their hazard mitigation 5-year evaluation plan. They had 3 meetings for the public attend. I attended them. And now we're talking about what we're going to do in the future, okay? Are we going to elevate homes? Are we going to acquire homes and just tear them down and create space, land for water to be able to be absorbed? Or are we going to reconstruct homes? I mean, that's where we're at now. We're in hazard mitigation mode. And so this is where we want to keep the city on their toes, right? All the cities, the county. We want to make sure that, that we continue to work on this problem that we have.
I think in their efforts, they have done a decent job at trying to listen to the people. I mean, we know that their hands are tied when it comes to certain funding and stuff. And I know maybe, residents could think that a better job could be done. But again, that is why we're here, is to try to break down that process and help people to understand that it's so much more than what's even in their span of control. And that does bring us up to where we're at now with how there was a county-wide hazard mitigation meeting. And so our city officials are heading up to Tallahassee to receive funding for, the plan that's starting in 2025. So that's kind of where we're at now. And there's also this statewide campaign, Elevate Florida, going on. And I think that's really important that we get that information out there. So let's talk about Elevate Florida and kind of where we're at now.
Right. So Elevate Florida is a FEMA plan where you can either elevate your structure, you can mitigate with reconstruction, meaning that if you can't lift your house, there are options for them to rebuild the ground up.
And lifting your house, that's no easy feat either.
Right.
That's a large home project.
Right, and you have to qualify. I mean, your property has to be eligible to be able to do that. So, that is going to all depend on engineering surveys and just basically, do you qualify? And then the other thing is acquisition, and the city has done this. They have acquired properties in the past, and they will demo these. They will tear them down, and they will create open spaces that can never be rebuilt on, so that there is more land for water.
We've seen this with the buildings of pump stations and retention ponds in the area where the city has seized people's homes and put pump stations there.
Yeah, when you talk about seized, people who had more than 50% of the value of their home in insurance claims from the last 2 hurricanes, we call that substantial loss. Okay, you got a letter from the city that said that you have a decision to make. You need to elevate, or you need to let us buy your property because you have had substantial loss so many times in so many years, okay? I'm not sure exactly. I think it might be twice in 5 years or something like that. And if it's more than 50% of the value of your property, so in other words, if you had a $200,000 home and you took a $125,000 loss from Hurricane Ian, that's more than 50% of the value of your home. And FEMA does not want to keep building your home. They do not want to keep building your home. So the state is offering plans to help you make decisions on what to do with your property.
It seems like it's kind of backing residents up into a corner.
Right.
Is what it seems like.
Right.
Because if you just experience such a substantial loss, and you met those stipulations, fees and other, monies that you have to come up with in order to be able to elevate your house. This isn't just like a
Yeah, it's not a freebie.
No, this is not.
It's not a freebie. You have to pay 25% of the cost. Okay, so you still have to pay 25% of the cost. There are limits on the square footage. You could lose your garage. I have several friends that finally have been approved and are awaiting this actual construction. The state is taking bids right now for people who are doing the foundation work and doing the construction, so that's where the state is at. But as far as, benefit to property owners, they say that, you can reduce premiums, it can increase your property value with only a cost share of 25% of the project. But still, that's a lot of money for a lot of people. And there are grant programs like Transform 386 that can help you to meet those qualifications based on your income. But still, that is a big undertaking. It's actually one that I have considered. I have not had substantial loss the second time, only the first time. And I don't want to be put into that bracket of, losing my home. I want it to be my choice.
This is why this is so impactful to residents. These are homes that people work life savings for and want to pass down.
Exactly.
Want to pass down to their children and their grandchildren. And I think this is really where we've seen the most impact in the community, is residents really hurting from the lack of movement that we've seen in our city government. And I think that real reason why this is still being highlighted is because of people showing up and continuing to talk about their experiences and their losses. And I mean, that hurricane was back in October. We've still we're still talking to people that are dealing with the brunt of it today. And it's one of those weird things where, someone experiences loss and in a hurricane and, but the world doesn't stop turning. So
yes,
people are still dealing with this today as we speak.
Yes, exactly. And that's actually kind of a sore spot for me because I live on the east side of Volusia County, east of Nova. If you live west of Nova, with the exception of a few places like Colony in the Wood and maybe Leisure Villas, you're oblivious to what's going on. There are people in my neighborhood that are still digging out from Milton and Ian. I still have repairs from Ian. So you feel like you've sort of been abandoned, all right? And that was my biggest rant when I went in front of city council, is I felt like they weren't getting enough boots on the ground to come through the neighborhood, at least, knock on the door, see who's really flooded, not depend on FEMA for that. We have district council people. They're sort of kind of responsible for everyone in their own district. And just, come around and drive around, see everybody's home sitting on the sidewalk. That is a traumatic situation to go through. And anyone who's been through that knows that. So if you haven't been flooded and you're living in a whole different community, you have no idea what it's like to be in this situation of still digging out 2 years later.
Ian hit us back in 2022, and you're right. Yeah. People are still dealing with the consequences of that today. And I know that you brought up a good point that there is a distinction between the city level and the county level. And so those meetings, you've been to both. You've been to city meetings and county meetings. So how do you see at the county level, do you see a faster moving pace, as far as funding?
I think that the county can move faster because, they're going to take their city commission from each city and what everyone's doing at the local city municipality level, advice and what's going on there. And then they push that up to the county level. The county is the one that has more pull in terms of getting the funding they need out of Tallahassee. Elevate Florida is an application process through the state of Florida. And the city is there to help you through that process, to help accommodate you through that process. But they're not the initial application location, and that's pretty well set out on the website that they have for Elevate Florida.
Because this is a statewide thing, we're not the only. That's another important. We're not the only county that's going for funding up to Tallahassee.
Exactly. Okay, so that brings up a point. Is like there is a huge piece of the pie out there, millions and millions. There's something like 60 million. So we have to hope to get our little piece of the pie. So, our local leaders have to go up, and they have to, they have to really state a good case as to why Volusia County needs this, 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 and that. So, that's where we're at with that. I think we have a really good chance of getting a pretty good piece of the pie, because we were impacted. We were heavily impacted. And so right now, from the meeting last night, there's 123 applications for Elevate Florida. Not many when you consider how many houses, were impacted. So this time around, there was only about 900 to 1,000 that were, impacted. But there's more, because I did not file a FEMA claim because my deductible was too high. It was really going to be a waste of time. So there's people like me that kind of fell through the cracks. But in Ian, there was thousands more. So it's important to kind of keep that into perspective. 123 homes applying for Elevate Florida is nothing. And we need to do more to get the word out so that people at least have some options, because the money is there. The county wants applications. They want people to apply. So the more people that apply, the more money they get. So we got to get the word out there for people that are really struggling and trying to make the decision as to whether or not they should stay in their home, they should leave and take a big bite on the amount that they're going to have to sell it for, okay? Or they should try and reconstruct.
So we did go through a change in our local government where we did get a new mayor.
Right.
So we've seen not only as we're walking through this process through a new year, we're also walking through this process, under new representation. I think we've seen, a good job. There's some talks at these council meetings of certain advisory boards in the works, and maybe we can go ahead and
Well, yeah, we did transition in a new mayor. This is in Port Orange. We transitioned in a new mayor. Scott Stiltner has come in, and then we had 2 new council members come in. So it is somewhat of a changing of the guard, but they're all local residents. They know what's going on in the community. It seems like it's been easy for them to sort of fill the seat. But clearly, from what I gather, they totally understand the situation. They're excited about going up to Tallahassee and trying to lobby for funding. We're all on the same page. They're on the same page, but it's difficult for them. They have to sit and listen to people cry literally at the microphone about their home. And so that's part of the job. I get it. But we really need proactive, aggressive leaders to take this, this situation that we have and really try and make a change. And enough of this risk management. We've got to move forward and be aggressive. And if it means a grassroots coalition like what you and I are trying to get started here, there are many people in the community I've hooked up with on social media. We all are we're getting together, and we're trying to stay strong in facing our city leaders.
Yes, and so there are resources out there for community members, for residents. I think one of the most important things that as a resident you can do is to show up to these city council meetings. Like you said, prepare that 3-minute speech, stand in front of your city officials and let them know how it's impacted you. That's been a big thing in keeping this alive.
Yeah, so this is new to me. I mean, I've never really stepped up to the podium before like this. So what I've decided to do is just get the courage to come up with a 3-minute, discussion about my problem, my community's problems, and other people are too. There's different approaches to this, of course. But, and then of course, you've got to go further. If you have to have heart-to-hearts with your district councilman, if you have to email.
I love that.
But I haven't yet. So with my city council, my district council. But you can also reach out. Like I did finally meet Valerie Dool at one of the meetings at the EOC, the Volusia County emergency management. And now I have a really good dialogue going with her, emailing why she updates me on things, and also phone conversations with engineering and the Mayor Stiltner seems very interested in wanting to have conversations. He's in it all the way to the end, and I'm hopeful that this is going to be a really good couple of years if we can move forward with the funding that we need to help us keep our houses from being flooded on the east side of Nova, particularly. Hopefully I'll be able to stay in my home.
I think Mayor Stiltner has done a great job at listening to what people have said and moving forward in this. And I think that's a great way to wrap it up. And
there'll be more, as we move forward. Every city council meeting brings, more information that we can, continue to get out into the community.
And so we encourage you to go on the City of Port Orange website, and that's really where it is. All of this information, me and Lori, we're not a magic ball or anything like that. You can find all of this information right on the city's website. You can find how the storm system works. You can find information about private easement. You can find information actually about a lot of the things that we covered today. And most importantly, you can find when the next city council meeting is, so that you can make sure that you're there with your little 3-minute speech prepared, because it really does take a community to come together, all of us, and want to see change for a more flood-resistant community. So I thank you so much, Lori, for joining me today. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, absolutely.